we've got a pretty amazing video tonight. Pastor Kevin did an extended interview with Mike. He did an interview with Cindy, 2 weeks ago? Last week. Was it last week?
I don't know.
No,
yeah,
I think it was 2
weeks.
In either case. And she was talking about what Mike went through with COVID-19, how he was on the respirator for a long time and struggled once he came off the respirator with the delusions and dreams that he had under sedation. And today, Mike, in that interview, spoke about how the devil had gotten into those delusions and was causing him to see these terrible things, to a point where he wanted to die in his dreams and may have actually tried to turn the machines off in real life. And Mike has this fantastic take on being prepared.
Yeah.
So why don't we just watch that video right now? Yeah. Okay.
Mike and I got sick a day apart. He got sick first on a Saturday night. I got sick on Sunday night. And we both did online visits with doctors, and he was told he had a virus. I was told that I had bronchitis, and we were both put on the Z-Pack, and we really didn't get any good results from that. And within a week, well, less than a week, I think, for him, he went to the ER and they kept him. So it progressed pretty quickly within a matter of about five days or so. And then a few days later, I went. I was bad enough. I already knew that I had COVID because they had tested me earlier in the week, and they did chest x-rays, and from that they said they knew I had pneumonia. Mike and I both had pneumonia, but they kept him. He ended up in the ER first, and I went after that. But they had tested me for COVID at the neighborhood hospital, and I had already gotten the results back, so I knew I had COVID when I went to the ER. And he was tested the day he went, and he found out the day after. I don't know, COVID's a mean disease. For both of us, it attacked our respiratory system. I know it doesn't attack everybody's respiratory system. But I was admitted on a Sunday night, and Monday afternoon, I found out that Mike had been put on a ventilator, and I didn't get to talk to him, which was very upsetting. I knew he was doing poorly because we were texting each other, and he got to where he hardly would answer, and then I think the last text I got from him was, "Bad day, please pray." And I knew that things were really rough. So I guess I wasn't horribly surprised. That afternoon, I prayed that the Lord would give me a dream of my husband, and I lay down from my nap, and I had a dream. And in the dream, he was well. He was actually home before me, and when I came home in my dream, he was painting the entire house.
Okay.
And yeah, Caleb said, "Yeah, that's a dream, Mom." That was a good dream. But I kind of felt like it was the Lord reassuring me that everything was going to be okay, And I was blessed with wonderful nurses. I had a nurse that she leaned over and kissed me on the head and hugged me and asked, could she pray with me? And she took both of my hands and she prayed a wonderful prayer for Mike and I. And it was really comforting. I know for my family, on the outside, one of the really hard things is the isolation of a COVID patient. Being stuck in a room alone, and my family was worried because they couldn't see me, and Mike's family couldn't see Mike. They didn't know what kind of shape we were in. And they prayed that the Lord would send comforters, and boy, he did. I had wonderful nurses, and it seemed like everyone was Christians.
Wow.
That I come across. I talked to them about the Lord, and they'd talk right back or say they were praying. And
so when you were a day apart, but when you went in, you didn't end up on a ventilator, and Mike wasn't on a ventilator when you were discharged, right?
When I was discharged, he was on a ventilator.
Oh.
When I went in, he went in first, 2 days ahead of me. And when I went in, I was never placed on a ventilator. Never. I was in the hospital for 5 days. I was having great difficulty breathing. I was on oxygen. and strong antibiotics. They gave Mike and I both the medication that they give for malaria that you hear about on the news.
Right.
They gave Mike and I both that right away, which I really felt like, in my case especially, that it made a big difference. Because I was real bad on Monday and Tuesday, and by Wednesday I was much better. And when they listened to my lungs, they said that my lungs had cleared. They were amazed.
But Mike didn't react as well to the medicine as you
He
did,
did
obviously.
not.
Yeah.
He did not. He got progressively worse and got to where he was really struggling to breathe. And that's when he made the decision to go on the ventilator. Really, it was life or death at that point.
Okay. And you told me some really interesting stuff. Like, I didn't realize how serious the ventilator experience was. And
absolutely not. I had no idea. For Mike, he was on the ventilator for 12 days. And since he's come off of the ventilator, it's been a real struggle for him. I didn't realize, they tell us now at the hospital that it's a very common thing for people who are on ventilators for any period of time, I guess, to have what they call ICU delirium. And while he was on the ventilator, he had some very, very vivid dreams. And they still seem very real to him. But at first, when he came off the ventilator, he was very confused. He could not separate reality from his dreams. And it took a couple of days, and he started realizing that the dreams were dreams, but they still affect him emotionally. He cries a lot. He's very emotional.
can you tell? You wrote and you told me some of those dreams. Man, that's kind of. Do you mind saying, just to show the journey that he was on? Do you mind mentioning what some of those were?
Well, he had a dream, and to be real honest, I feel kind of bad about this, because when he was on the ventilator, because I was also a COVID patient, I was on the same floor as him. However, he was in ICU and I was not. And I had wonderful nurses and he had wonderful nurses, and they thought, why should she not be able to see her husband? So they arranged for me to take a trip from my room to his room. I had to suit up in extra, protective things to protect him probably. And they wheeled me into his room, and I got to do that twice while I was in the hospital. I got to do it. The first time. I was really surprised at the condition he was in. I thought that when somebody was on a ventilator that they were just in a coma.
Right.
And his nurse said, stand up, and you can lean over him and talk to him. And I did. He seemed to be aware that I was there. He could open his eyes. I told him, I love you, and I know that you love me. And he nodded his head. He could reach for my hand. And I got to visit with him for about 10 minutes. He was still running a fever. He was very, very sick. And shortly after that, we learned that he had developed MRSA as well in his airways. But the second time I got to visit him in the ICU was the day that I was being discharged. And they arranged for me to go in and see him. And at that point, you kind of don't know if you're seeing your husband for the last time or not. Right. In the news, you only hear bad. But I had faith that God was going to bring him through. And I wasn't really thinking that in my heart, but I know that the workers there probably were. And they were all teary-eyed. And they wheeled me in, and, I got to say my goodbyes. And I told him it hurt me really bad to leave him there. And he started crying. And I told him I loved him and I was coming home to get things ready for his return. And I tell you all that to go back to his dreams.
Okay.
He had a dream that I was in a blue gown, and I had worn a blue gown in the room. And he had a dream that I had died. And it was very, very, very real to him. And it still is very real to him. He still hurts from it, even though he knows it's not reality.
Mhm.
He knows that that's not reality. He
Mhm.
also had some dreams. Our youngest son has 2 kids, and he had a dream that he had other children that we didn't know about and that they had been murdered, and that he had the man on the run, and it was up to him to make sure he didn't murder anybody else. So the dreams he had were horrific, and they seem very real.
Mm.
And I pray for him all the time that he's able to get over those thoughts. I had no idea that ICU could do that to a person.
And you mentioned in your email, you said, talked about post-traumatic stress, and in regards to this, I mean, it's really like post-traumatic stress to these dreams, is it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes,
Wow.
because they seem very real still,
Yeah.
even though he knows they're not. The effects of them are devastating. I mean, I'm sure you've had a bad dream
Yeah.
where you wake
Sure.
up mad at somebody and you're mad at them all day, and you know it was a stupid dream, but you know,
Mhm.
you can't get over it, even though you know it's not right. And he is the same way. He knows fact from fiction, but the fiction still upsets him.
Yeah.
And he's, he says there's stories he hasn't told me, and I know that his experience was horrific, and I know also that this is not a unique experience,
Mhm.
because they told us that ICU delirium is quite common in people who've been on a ventilator. Well, I think you have a choice that you can either you can choose to be fearful, or you can choose to walk in faith. And, I'm old enough that I have lived enough life that, and I've been a Christian long enough that I have had many crises in my life before, many crises. And God has always been faithful. And, a lot of times, fears would start to creep in, and I would always go back to the Word of God, and I would choose, I just choose to believe the voice of truth, the voice of God. What is God saying about this? Not what is fear saying about this, not what is the news saying about this. I just put my faith in the Lord, and I had been reading a book by Joyce Meyer, and in that book, she's talking a lot about speaking the Word of God out loud, speaking it, confessing God's promises to us. And so that's what I did. I looked up scriptures concerning healing, and I just started reading them out loud, and it would fire me up, so to speak. It would fire me up. This is what God says. I don't have to be afraid. I can trust in God. And my past experience has shown me that I can trust in God.
Mhm.
And so really that's kind of how I've gotten through it. Well, I just got a call from his doctor, and there still are some concerns. He seems to be doing very well in the early part of the day and through the whole day, but in the evening time, he seems to get more emotional and a little more confused, where he's not confused at all through the day. They're trying to figure that out. I mean, they may even do a brain scan. She was talking about possibly doing that when I talked with her today. They've done a lot of other tests and everything. They did another COVID test on him, and it's negative. Yay!
Yay.
He
So
was real happy about that one.
I bet he was. Yeah.
Yeah, the COVID test is negative, so he's great to be around all of our kiddos, and we're thrilled about that. Have someone come in and evaluate his eating too, because the ventilator messes with your vocal cords in your throat. It can affect your swallowing, and they want to make sure. They're worried about him following the diet that he's supposed to be on, which I'd make sure that he would, but they don't want him to choke. They're concerned about him choking, and they're concerned about him falling. The ideal thing would have been for him to get into an acute rehabilitation place,
Mhm.
but what insurance we have, they're just not going to pay for it. We're going to have to do this at home.
I
We're
can
going to bring
understand.
him home. We're going to bring him home, and we're going to believe God is just going to help us. He's going to help us through it. He is. I know he will. Just continued healing for Mike. And as I mentioned, his parents both got COVID about the same time we did. His mother did very well. She really did very well. She's at home healing still. But his father was put on a ventilator, and he's been on the ventilator 7 or 8 days. So this has been a hard blow for his family to have so many people so sick. And we're just believing God for another miracle. We know that all that has to happen is God say, get up, and he will. I'm just so thankful for all that God's done. Yeah. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to give praise to the Lord for what he's done. I'm not used to really doing this sort of thing, and I'm sure you can tell I'm nervous, but when you asked me to, would I share our story, I didn't hesitate, because I don't ever want to be slow to tell what a wonderful God we serve and how faithful he is.
Well,
so that's what I would say. If you don't know the Lord, get to the Lord. He is faithful and he loves you.
This lady lost control out of Greencastle, and she lost control of her truck on ball tires in the rain and pulled right in front of me. And I was in a van, and it just rolled it. And when she hit me, I don't really remember a lot, except the van just wouldn't stop. As far as the wreck was concerned, I had broken bones in my foot, 3 broken ribs, oil-based paint all over me. It was horrible. I had all this paint in my van, and when the lady hit me, it just blew up, and I had paint dripping everywhere. So the van was on its side, and I'm like way down here by the door, and they had to cut the windshield to get me out. And I spent the night in the trauma center at Methodist Hospital. I mean, I hurt everywhere for 2 or 3 days. God was trying to get a message across, and I didn't really get it. I didn't really get the message until I almost died a couple weeks ago, So I'm like, okay, God, I think I can see where you're going with this. They put oxygen on me immediately. And then he took x-rays. And to be honest with you, I just don't remember exactly what happened after that. I know I went on the respirator, but I don't remember it. And I even don't remember Cindy being there. I know that's horrible. I can even show you texts where we text each other, but I don't remember it. Because when they put you on the respirator, they sedate you so much that you just don't remember anything. So I do remember looking at the x-ray, and I could see my lungs had all the spots on them. And I remember the doctor saying, we got to get rid of this. And that's all I remember until about 2 days after I was off of the respirator. Then I started recalling, I remember that. I believe that Satan is definitely at work, during all this. I think that he's such a snake because it's free. It's almost like free terrain for him because people are in this state of sedation, and he just enters into your mind. It's just so the really, and all my dreams were evil. There wasn't really any good dreams. They were all evil, and there's a lot of them. The one that I remember and first of all, I'll tell you, it seemed so incredibly real, like real life. It really did. And, while you're in the dream, you don't know that you're on a respirator. You don't know that, you're just thinking it's real life, So, but I remember being in this hospital room, and he had convinced me, and I'm talking about Satan now. He had convinced me that Cindy was gone, that my parents were both gone in the spirit realm. That they had died, and they were actually talking to me through the ceiling. Okay, and Cindy was there, kind of talking to me, and my boys. He convinced me about my boys were gone, and I heard her kind of whisper to me, and then I look over and she was gone. I'm like, well, what's going on here? And I put my hand out and she gave me a visor that she used to wear, on her head. I'm like, oh my God, this is Cindy's. And so anyway, I was struggling so much to breathe. I remember, that particular dream, I was struggling to breathe, and I thought to myself, what's the use? I mean, I might as well just go ahead and end it, And so I was trying to turn my air off. I was trying, just to turn everything off. And I remember not too long after that, I had this big belt on me and everything. So I must have tried something in real life too. I was probably trying to, but before I realized that they had me all bound up, and so I must have tried something. But he had me convinced that everybody was gone, everybody was dead, and so I was considering taking my own life, and then 3 or 4 times I can just remember gasping for air. I could not breathe, and I think that might have been before I went on the respirator, but I just, in my dreams, I just couldn't breathe, at all. And I remember, in all that mess, I just remember saying, and in my spirit, I was saying, God, is this it? I mean, is this it? And I'm thinking, if you get me through this, God, I promise I will be a different person. I mean, these dreams stick with you, they stick with you. And I remember talking to Cindy when I came out, a couple days out of when I was in a different room. They had me off the respirator. I was in a different room. And I could not decipher real life from my dream world. And I couldn't understand why Cindy was taking care of the kids, and when she's supposed to be in heaven, I'm like, well, how is God letting you come down and homeschool or e-school our grandkid? Like, how is this happening? And I'm thinking my boys are in the spirit realm too. I'm like, well, what? How are you guys doing this? How are you? And they were like, what are you talking about? So Cindy's like, you'll understand everything. I'm like, okay, I can live with that, So I'm still thinking that they're all in the spirit realm, and I just could not decipher. It took me days. I mean, the crying and and I still get emotional, because it was just so incredibly real. When you go on the respirator, of course, there's a chance you're going to have these dreams. But the thing you have to understand is if you're not right with God, there's a chance I wouldn't have made it, If someone's going to go on the respirator, I suggest that they make sure that they're, pray before you go on and say, rebuke Satan. And, because I believe Satan is definitely at work in these dreams. Man, I'm glad I was right with God, because I could have died, I mean, just as well as my dad did, I could have been gone, and I wouldn't have had anything to say about it, because you're under this sedation, you don't really know exactly what's going on. I definitely thank God that I'm still here, and I definitely want to bring Him glory for Him, bringing me through and protecting me through the whole thing. He wants us to be in an attitude of praise, so I've kind of rededicated my life, and I've stayed in this attitude of praise, and my life has changed dramatically. I want you to open your mouth, Don't keep your mouth shut. Open it. I'm like okay. And God's like, you deal with all these people, every day. You go to different jobs and different people and open your mouth, it's just as simple as that. God told me he has me, and it's just amazing what's been happening. The thing I would like to say is that, when you go on the respirator, of course, there's a chance you're going to have these dreams. But the thing you have to understand is if you're not right with God, there's a chance I wouldn't have made it, And I don't know that I would have made myself right. I guess, if someone's going to go on the respirator, I suggest that they make sure that they're, pray before you go on and say, rebuke Satan. And, because I believe Satan is definitely at work in these dreams, So I was thinking to myself just the other day, it's like, man, I'm glad I was right with God, because I could have died, just as well as my dad did, I could have been gone, and I wouldn't have had anything to say about it, because you're under this sedation, you don't really know exactly what's going on, until you come out of it, you wake up, and then all these dreams start coming back to you, and you're thinking, oh my God, what happened? Now I do remember, on one of those times that I was gasping for air, asking God, I was like, God, if I do remember in my spirit, making sure that I was right with God, so, but still though, if I would have died, I wouldn't have really known that it was coming, that's one thing. I don't know. The other thing is, I definitely thank God that I'm still here, and I definitely want to bring him glory for him, bringing me through and protecting me through the whole thing, and I mentioned that now I'm in this attitude of praise all the time. I try to keep this attitude of praise, and I found out that a couple things happened. One, the horrible, evil dreams leave my mind. So they're not really on my mind as much anymore, which is awesome, because I was a mess. I just couldn't hardly function, And the other thing is, we had this huge hospital bill, and they just decided to write it off. They just wrote it off. That was God, And the other night, I was having all these worries, and all these, I could get this, I could get that, I could still, get something wrong here or something, and I was laying there trying to pray, and all these, it was like all this stuff's hitting me, and he goes, don't worry, I got you. That's all I had to say. And it just shocked me. Yesterday morning, that lady called me and she told me that they wrote that off. And I said, you know what, God, I didn't realize you meant that you had me in every area of my life, As far as work for God, I'm really dedicated now to really, I've made a promise to God that I would really get out, just try to really put the word out as much as I can, and I feel like, going back to the accident, the reason why I mentioned it is because I feel like, God was trying to get a message across, and I didn't really get it, I didn't really get the message until I almost died a couple weeks ago, so I'm like, okay, God, I think I can see where you're going with this, and he wants us to be in an attitude of praise, so I've kind of rededicated my life, and and I stayed in this attitude of praise, and my life has changed dramatically. And sorry, I still get emotional. Anyway, I think we're definitely living in the end times, and I think that, God's like, hey, there's people out there that need to hear my word. They just need a little plant. They need a little something. They just, I want you to open your mouth. Don't keep your mouth shut. Open it. I'm like, okay. And God's like, you deal with all these people, every day. You go to different jobs and different people, and open your mouth. It's just as simple as that. And I know that I've had a calling on my life, and I've suppressed it. And I know He's called me to some kind of ministry, and I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm open to it now, and it's like wherever God leads me to go, I'm going to go, and and that's kind of where I'm at now, and that's kind of the result of all this, and it's like, I just really feel strongly that God is trying to get us to realize how close the time is, and trying to get the word across to the people that aren't ready to die, and they're going to not make it. It's very horrid. I've had a dream about hell where people are just lost forever, burning, and just tears me up. It's given me a lot of motivation to go after people that don't really know the message. It's really given me the motivation.
I know, isn't that so powerful? We had so many amazing comments during the video. Do you want me to read them?
Yeah, please read some.
So Jennifer said, "We never ever know when our end might come. I agree, Mike. Continual praise of God will subdue evil. I thank God for your recovery and testimony. Praise Him for you." So agreed with that for sure.